This is Orlando Sentinel Now.
Hello, it's Wednesday, August 18th. Rich Pope here with Grace Toohey, Matt Palm, Mike Lafferty. And they have our topics we're going to touch on today. We're going to talk about 911 calls and an influx in them. We're going to find out about that. Also, we're going to find out lessons learned from the Joel Greenberg mess and big vacancies left in the Central Florida arts community. But we're going to start here with Grace Toohey, and we're going to talk about those 911 calls in Seminole County and officials actually asking individuals to actually think about what they're calling for. Grace, what's happening?
Yeah, so they have just seen a record number of 911 calls and ambulance transports in the last few months, actually. So this has been, really back since March and April, all the way through right now, that they are just seeing unprecedented number of 911 calls and ambulance calls. And, one of the issues they're seeing is that a lot of people are calling for, what might be able to be taken care of at an urgent care or with your, normal physician. Some of these might be, not as serious symptoms of COVID-19. And so what Seminole County Fire Department is asking is that if you have these more minor symptoms, do not call 911 because, they're already experiencing such a high number of calls for actual emergencies. But they are very clear if there is a real emergency, a fire, an accident, or if you do have those really serious symptoms, trouble breathing or, a lot of pressure in your chest, you do still should call 911 and they will still respond, but they want to make sure that they are able to respond. And that's why they're asking people to really think about when they're calling 911.
Let's talk about these numbers. Obviously high, explained as like record-setting numbers.
Yeah, so they're saying that these are the highest numbers they've seen in Seminole County history. And we're actually seeing that in other counties in Central Florida as well. Orange County seeing really high numbers, Lake County seeing really high numbers. And so they're just concerned, and they're saying that at certain parts of the day, in Seminole County, at least, they're at these crisis levels where they're worried about how many ambulances they have available. And if someone does have an emergency, will they be able to get there? And so that's why they're really concerned about this. Other counties are also having issues as well, but Orange County is saying it's not quite at that crisis level yet.
Yeah, it's almost like a two-sided coin on this one as far as the waits too. Ambulances get to the hospitals and they end up having to wait there, which is causing a little bit of a backlog as well.
Yep, the hospitals are so full, so crowded that, they're getting there with patients and then ambulances are sitting there. They're saying for sometimes 45 minutes to an hour. And so that means that those ambulances are off the street and can't respond to calls. And so that's why they're really asking for the public's help to make sure that, they do have ambulances free when someone's having an emergency, because they want to be there. That's what they say, this is our job, to respond to people and help them in their greatest time of need.
What about the impact of the EMS crews? How is it affecting them? Because I understand COVID is going through the ranks there as well.
Yeah, so there's been big numbers of people out, it seems like almost every day. Yeah, I think it was, in the 30s and 40s, number of people who are firefighters or EMTs who are out with COVID or have been exposed to COVID in some way that they have to be quarantined for some period of time. And so that's really having an impact on the system as well. People are coming in and having to work mandatory overtime, stepping up for extra shifts, and a lot of agencies have said, kind of compared this to a hurricane response, um, except this is lasting more than a year now. So they're saying, crews are tired, the morale is down, and it's hard to keep going. So they're really asking for the public's help to try and make this as easy as possible.
All right. Well, you can read about that one right now on OrlandoSentinel.com and stay with Grace for more updates. Appreciate that. We're going to move forward here to Matt Palm and Central Florida arts community losing some big leaders, some vacancies. Matt, let's just go through it. Looks like there's three big ones here. And let's start with Central Florida Community Arts. Joshua Vickery heading on somewhere else. Let's talk about that organization.
Yeah, it's going to change the landscape here a little bit on the cultural scene in Central Florida. These are not just three respected leaders, these are three longtime leaders. So it's really some big changes for these organizations. As you mentioned, Joshua Vickery was one of the founders of Central Florida Community Arts. He has led that organization for 11 years as executive director. And of course, when you found an organization and then continue to run it, your personality kind of imbues the organization. I mean, it really was sort of it was under his direction literally, but also sort of emotionally or mentally. I mean, it was his baby, as he would say himself. So it's a big departure there. And then two other organizations at Orlando Ballet, the artistic director, Robert Hill, is stepping down. He's been there for almost 13 years. The artistic director of a ballet organization really runs the programming. What we saw on stage was from his brain, was what he wanted us to see, what the dancers reported to him and worked on the way he wanted them to. So that is a big change for any ballet company. Finally, Pam Cantor is leaving the Holocaust Center. She has been at that position for 15 years. And the Holocaust Center, many will remember or know from visits, as a very small operation up in Maitland, a couple of rooms, some few exhibits. But you may recall they are planning a huge museum in downtown Orlando. They're taking over the former Chamber of Commerce building along Ivanhoe Boulevard. And it's going to be just a massive growth for that organization into a high profile location and role in the community. And she has paved the way for that. She has done all the work to get that ready. She is stepping down in part because, as she and the board said, she is not a museum expert. And she's done such a good job of preparing this organization for this huge growth. They need someone now who has different experiences to take it forward.
Yeah, let's circle back to Orlando Ballet. Much like the Holocaust Center, very exciting time for them. The whole new center there. It just seems like a great opportunity for someone else to step into.
Absolutely. I mean, the organization is probably in the best shape it has been in years in terms of its finances, in terms of its board, its leadership structure. They do have this new center right on Lock Haven Park, as you mentioned, Harry. It's Orlando Ballet Center, so they have a new building in which to rehearse and work, and they're going to be doing some of their performances in their auditorium there. Then the way the ballet season works, they're kind of between seasons right now. The new season is just starting up. The dancers coming back to work to get ready. The first performance is in a couple months. So it's a logical time to make a transition like this. In the case of the other two organizations, Joshua Vickery is going to stay at CFC Arts through October to help come up with a structure to run the organization while they do a national search for a new leader. And at the Holocaust Center, Pam Cantor is going to stay until by at least the end of the year to make sure that they have a definite plan in place of how a new person can come in and take over. At the ballet, they have a choreographer in residence, Jordan Morris. He was the man who choreographed some of their big successes last year, Moulin Rouge and Peter Pan. He is going to step in and be this year's guest artistic director while they search for a permanent replacement. So everyone has a plan of how things can continue. Hopefully audiences won't notice any, big seismic change. These groups will continue their programming and continue to move forward in the case of the Holocaust Center with the museum. But there's just going to be new faces at the top.
All right. Well, yeah, big shoes to fill there. Appreciate that one, Matt Palm. You can read about all three of those changes happening right now on OrlandoCentinel.com. Now we're going to finish up with Mike Lafferty. We're going to talk about this Joel Greenberg mess, the corruption, and lessons that can be learned from it. And one thing you mentioned in the editorial is that more oversight over these tax collectors. Let's talk about that, Mike.
Yeah, let me start off by acknowledging that, tax collector budget oversight is probably the most boring topic you're going to have on this show in a while, or so it seems. The reason why people should care about this is because, Joel Greenberg was elected in a countywide election, and he spent close to 4 years basically stealing money from taxpayers of Seminole County. And the problem was no one stopped him when they should have, at least. The problem is that the oversight of this budget from which he was stealing money is done by the Department of Revenue in Tallahassee. And even though Seminole County and some private citizens were shooting up flares into the sky, begging the state to do something about this thievery, the state just kind of shrugged its shoulders. So, the issue here is who ought to oversee the budget of the tax collector. And to us, the editorial board, it seemed pretty clear, give Seminole County that responsibility since the state had their chance and they blew it.
Right. You mentioned not giving it to Seminole County, but this just seems like more bureaucracy. I understand keeping it local, but it just seems like it could be even more of a mess.
We don't see it that way. I mean, I think that what we learned from this was that Seminole County is much closer to the voters of Seminole County, their constituency, than these bureaucrats in Tallahassee. And they were the ones who were trying to set things right. So what's been proposed is a charter amendment that would allow the county to have more oversight. But, in our view, what really needs to they're on the right track, but what really needs to change is state law. The states ought to just let the counties look after the tax collector budgets in the same way that they do sheriffs, for example. So this kind of seems like a no-brainer to us, especially after what happened. But the issue is that the state's been in a mood of taking control away from local government over a number of years now. They are not inclined right now to give them more power. So it's unlikely to happen. So probably the best thing is for Seminole County to just proceed with a charter amendment and do what they can.
All right, Mike. Well, thanks for that update. You can read his editorial right now on OrlandoSentinel.com. And, as he mentioned, it may not be the most exciting topic, but obviously something that really needs to be watched, and appreciate them doing so. All right, well, we're going to push pause for today. Appreciate all the topics here today. Until next time, I'm Rich, Grace, Matt, and Mike. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Watch Orlando Sentinel Now live every weekday at noon on our Facebook page and on OrlandoSentinel.com.